Good morning. Welcome to the Children's Museum of Atlanta's Town Square. This is a virtual series designed for families, educators, and our community to learn about and discuss important issues and challenges that are weighing on so many of us, particularly right now. The Children's Museum of Atlanta serves as a town square for families with young children. And we are a gathering place where all are invited to engage, explore, and learn in the way that children really learn the best through play. We often talk about the power of play, and it really is a powerful way of learning. We've been hosting these Town Square series since July. So if you've missed past sessions, they have all been recorded. And they can be found on our blog, which you can access through our website at childrensmuseumatlanta.org. We've explored a number of really important topics, including implicit bias and racism in the classroom, health issues, particularly in light of COVID, the challenges we're all facing through virtual learning and parenting through the pandemic. Last month, we turned our attention to the LGBTQIA community, particularly again with regard to children. And we heard from parents, educators, and advocates in our community on this important topic. This month, we are looking ahead to the holiday season. We know because we hear from families that so many are stressed and actually grieving the forced absence of beloved traditions. The pandemic has impacted all of our communities, all of our families, and all of us as individuals. And the issues around mental health are only going to increase as we look ahead to Thanksgiving, Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, New Year's Eve, in a way that is fundamentally different from the way it's ever been in the past. That is why this is our focus. And we could not be more honored and happy to kick this off by welcoming Dr. Patrice Harris. Dr. Harris is a psychiatrist here in Atlanta, and she was the 174th president of the American Medical Association. She was also the first African-American woman to hold that very prestigious position. Dr. Harris has a diverse experience as a private practicing physician, a county public health director, and a patient advocate. Dr. Harris grew up actually in Bluefield, West Virginia. She dreamed of entering medicine at a time when few women of color were encouraged to become physicians. She spent her formative years at West Virginia University, earning a bachelor's in psychology and a master's in counseling psychology. Ultimately, she got her medical degree in 1992. It was during that time that her passion for helping children emerged, and she completed her psychiatry residency and fellowship at Emory University here in Atlanta. Two themes that govern Dr. Harris's professional life, and one of the really important reasons that we're so happy to have her here today is that she has a passion to improve the lives of children, and she has a passion around service to others. Dr. Harris is a fellow of the American Psychiatric Association and has a private practice and consults with public and private organizations on health service delivery and emerging trends in practice and health policy. Also, she is a professor at Emory University and the Morehouse School of Medicine. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Dr. Patrice Harris this morning.
Thank you so much. It's so very good to be with you.
Dr. Harris, I'd love to just kick off, and instead of hearing from me about you, we'd love to hear from you about you, just a little bit about yourself, and also really why you thought it was important to take time out of what I know is a very busy schedule to be with us here this morning.
Well, I have to say, first of all, I love the work and the passion and everything really that goes on in at the Children's Museum. And in fact, I became really engaged when you had an exhibit regarding brain development and early childhood development. And so I was so excited about participating in that because, again, as you read my bio, I am passionate about improving the lives of children. And through the course of my career, I've learned so much about the importance of early childhood development and brain development. And so when the Children's Museum called, I always say yes. And I also think that it's critical that we talk about how we are all navigating and getting through the pandemic with an eye on the children. I have had my own struggles, and I think it's important for us to give ourselves the grace and the space to have whatever feelings we have, but we have to talk about it. And so I'm so glad that you really invited me here and you are elevating this issue. And I do believe it's particularly important that we talk about this issue as the holidays are upon us.
Well, thank you. So as I mentioned earlier, we see families every day. We hear from families every day. And what we are hearing is that, in addition to the stress around learning and school and virtual schooling, there is a lot of stress just in general. Families really not being able to do the things they normally do in the way they normally do it. So as we're looking ahead to the holidays, we know that even in the best of times, holidays can be very stressful. So would love to hear about what you are hearing from the community that you serve about the holiday season, particularly for families with young children.
Well, people are worried because overall, we have seen across this country the number of infections increase. We know we are beginning the flu season. We know we are indoors together a little bit more. We know parents are juggling multiple role responsibilities. They're now educators, in addition to being parents. They're tech support. So all these different roles that parents have to play. And clearly, our children's lives, really all of our lives, have been disrupted. And survey after survey show that people in this country are reporting increased symptoms of anxiety and depression, difficulty sleeping, worrying more. And I have to add to that, of course, we are still awaiting the results of the election, but a significant number of folks said they had been worried about the anxiety and all of the issues around worried about the election and all of the issues around the election and politics has just added to the overall anxiety around COVID. But again, as I said, I give myself grace and space to experience these feelings. I want to say these feelings are not unexpected in times of crisis and uncertainty. And so we should all allow ourselves to feel those feelings. But of course, if those feelings, either in parents or in children, begin to impact our ability to function, sleep problems, appetite problems, children may become extremely irritable. Look, all of us have our moments of irritability. So we want to make sure that we differentiate just having more anxiety, more sadness, and more irritability from when it begins to impair our ability to function. That's when you need help. But in the meantime, we should, again, allow ourselves to be open, parents should be open, really, really listen to children and, have these family conversations on a routine basis. We need to routinize sort of even talking about these issues. Sometimes we don't talk about these issues until there's a crisis. But if every day, and I may say this again later in our question and answer period, if every day there's a time allotted for talking about the day, talking about frustrations and feelings, that is better than just waiting until something comes up and having the conversations. It's about routinizing. First of all, children need new routines. Yes, their usual routines have been disrupted, They need consistent new routines. And I recommend putting into those routines sometime each day, it doesn't have to be long, to talk about the day, frustrations and feelings.
That sounds really great. And what you made me realize real quickly is that if any of our listeners have questions for Dr. Harris, please enter them as a comment on your Facebook Live, and we will field as many as we can towards the end of our conversation. But Dr. Harris, how would you, so that just sounds like a great thought around every day, just a check-in that becomes not a big deal, but just a routine. And how would you recommend, looking ahead at a very different holiday season, that families think about approaching the holidays? There are going to be differences, but how can families really, because this isn't just about the children, it's about the parents too, having to adjust to this wholly different way of celebrating.
Absolutely. We have lost our usual routines. And unfortunately, and I just want to note this because there may be some in the audience who've actually lost a family member to COVID. So we certainly want to recognize that, but we are grieving, but we are not hopeless and we are not helpless in this situation. So I urge parents and families to go into the holidays with a sense of calm, with a resolve, with a sense of purpose to develop those new routines and a plan. And those conversations should be happening right now. So calm, resolve, purpose, and planning. And of course, it's early November, so there's still time to say, all right, the Thanksgiving, maybe traditions that we normally have, we won't be able to do, but what can we do this year? I saw so many very creative and innovative ways that people were giving out candy for Halloween. So we should go into thinking about Thanksgiving and Christmas and Hanukkah and Kwanzaa and the New Year's, as you said, with a plan right now. Let's plan out what we are going to do, because there are things that we can do. Sometimes we get focused so much on what we can't do that we forget to focus on what we can do. There are opportunities. They're different, they're new, but I believe that's what families should be doing right now. And the kids could get involved. There could be a project. Okay, let's plan out some new activities. We know here are the parameters. We won't be able to do what we normally do, but what can we do? And get the entire family involved, but do so in a purposeful, thoughtful, and calm manner.
Well, that's such a great idea. And I know, just again, children I think they would rise to a challenge like that. How can we really make this a spectacular holiday?
Yes.
Doing it differently. And it seems that giving children the ability to weigh in on this and have a positive impact on the way Thanksgiving will happen, or Christmas. Again, that just really sounds like a fantastic idea. When we talked before, you mentioned language, how we talk about things, how parents talk to their children and each other, how we're all talking to each other, and the power and impact of language. And I wonder if you might be able to just speak about that a little bit.
Well, one of my favorite 2-word phrases is words matter. I don't know about you, I may be a little older than you, but you may remember when we used to hear and say, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words can never hurt me. Actually, words are powerful. That's one of those, I could do a whole session on some of the things we sometimes have to unlearn from our early childhood, especially even some of those nursery rhymes and things like that. But words do have power. And they do matter. And so we should all, parents, of course, especially, be careful about the words that we use. A friend of mine, we were talking about his 2 teenagers. Well, I think they're 11 and 12. And he said, boy, they are little sponges. They absorb everything. And so the words that we do matter. Now, and I would just say that, if we say, oh my God, this is going to be the worst Christmas ever. Oh my God, we're not going to be able to do this. Oh my goodness, those words then translate. Our children are absorbing those words. If you say matter of factly, yes, and I'm not saying to deny or pretend that everything is typical or normal or even okay. Not asking people to do that, but just say, listen, we are not going to be able to visit grandmother or aunt this year, but here's what we can do. And if we have a purpose, and let's decide this year what our purpose is for Thanksgiving. And let's decide what our family purpose is. And, it may be just everybody take a nap. So I'm not saying, people have to have these huge, grand family mission statements and vision. What's our purpose? Our purpose is to enjoy one another's company or to play a game. By the way, and when I learned that the Children's Museum was providing some of the old-fashioned board games to folks who are working with that, I was so excited because I think that's a good idea. Actually, I think for me personally, and aside here as a child psychiatrist, I'm always worried about the amount of time our youngsters spend. And I'm not talking about educational time, but apart from educational time, on their phones and their iPads. And so I think that here, again, there's been an opportunity to connect over those old-fashioned board games or card games. But of course, not everyone has the privilege of even purchasing those card games and board games. So I know you all were involved in that. But I think that are some of the things and the conversations that parents can have. What is our new purpose? And really watch the language about catastrophizing, and this is going to be the worst Christmas ever and worst Hanukkah ever. And I think, and I'll get into the broader picture, and I think I said this to you. I'm sorry that and it wasn't me, and it was that we, in the beginning, the royal we, this country, used the term lockdown. Yes, we did have to shelter in place. In fact, I'm not, at the AMA, we use the term shelter in place. And it wasn't just because we were trying to pretty up something that we didn't like. But again, words do matter. And it was shelter in place. It was doing some things knowing that there was another phase coming on. So I do believe words do matter, and we should just monitor the words and the phrases and whether or not we are catastrophizing this. Listen, this is a crisis. No one wants a pandemic, but when you're really honing in on thinking what your family can do, I think we should focus on, as I said, what can we do rather than what we cannot do.
Well, I think that is so important. And when you were talking about games and trying to pull away from the computer a little bit, and again, we're actually navigating that, where the Children's Museum is a hands-on organization, and we've created a very safe environment for that, for families to enjoy. But we're also reaching people through computer technology, which has been fantastic. But there is a time, especially during the holidays with family, when you want to just shut that off and be together. It's an important, those social emotional skills that get developed when you're engaging with someone in person. So even if you can't purchase a game, there are certainly games you can play that don't even involve items, things, just,
That's a good point. When I was little, my parents would say, go outside and play. And that was it. You figure it out, but just go outside. And I think you make a point. I want to make sure it is about balance, because we are on technology right now and able to have this wonderful conversation. So it's about balance and how you use the technology. Certainly over the holidays, we will be using the technology to connect with loved ones, maybe that we can't go visit. And that's okay, but it's about the balance. And now I think there is time to add some of the things that we had stopped doing into our toolbox. The more tools we have in the toolbox, the better. And we should be thinking about balance.
Yeah, that's always balance. And so this is kind of an odd question, but when we all have the opportunity to look back at this time. And believe me, I'm looking forward to looking back at this time, as we all are. What do you think families, what should we take away from this time as families that are both positive and negative? How can we use this time as a springboard for positive change?
Well, first of all, I hope we do that. When we get through the crisis, I hope everyone from, of course, leaders in our country to organizations, to family members, to individuals, I hope we take a moment and take some time to think about what we learned. And I think we should, and this will be different, for different institutions and families and individuals, but I think we should, use a week and make that a project and saying, what worked? So when we were confronted with something new or with a crisis or worry in our family, what worked? What did we do? Because not everything worked, right? And there might have been a time, folks have said, you know what, I'm just done. But what worked? What made us feel better? What worked for our family? What didn't work? What made the situation worse? And I think, having some of those conversations and saying, and it's not about blaming or judging, it's that we do want to learn. I talked about, I wish we hadn't used the term lockdown. Another thing I wish we, as a broader society in the health community had done is at the beginning, it was an emergency and we needed to go big and we needed to have emergency solutions. But I wish we had taken a little bit of time to say, all right now we are in an emergency situation. And so we are doing things, and a lot of things are unable to operate at their usual capacity. But after this, we will be able to gradually, and let's say in phase 2, we'll be able to do some things. And I think you and I would probably agree with this. I think we could have put more priority on children. I remember thinking back in March and April when schools were just beginning to shut down, that planning, and I know some school systems did this, planning should have been occurring then and there. And in my opinion, and I think you and I are similar in these opinions, but I bet most people are, most people share that children should be prioritized. And I believe in a lot of places, children were not prioritized. To me, getting children back in school should have been prioritized over opening bars and restaurants for adults. And we could have said, okay, we're going to decrease the transmission in our community because we want to get children in school as soon as possible. And so we're going to prioritize children at every step of the way. So those are just a few of the lessons I think we could have learned overall. And then I hope families look at their own family systems and what worked and what didn't work without blaming or judging.
Well, that's how things progress. We try things, we miss a beat, we correct, and we move forward. And hopefully, just on an individual basis, a family basis, as a community, I hope that we will all learn and do better going forward, sort of kind of bringing perspective to the way we operate.
And the other thing, and I'm going to use myself as example because I'm going to stop my video, but still listen and talk to you for 30 seconds. The one thing that I think has happened is we've all been a little bit more willing to share our true selves and our true lives, on Zoom and these calls. And the dogs have walked by and the children have walked in and the cat, has batted over. And so, I think at the beginning we were all, makeup on it. But as sometimes, of course, I hope I'm presentable today, but, and sometimes when it's a routine meeting, we are, okay, I have on a t-shirt today and I don't have on any makeup. So I think we actually allowed a little bit more of our human selves to show through. So that's something that I think has been a good thing. I know that working with children, I've seen so much more anxiety, and all of their lives are played out in social media. If they make a mistake, when I made a mistake, the world didn't know it, right? But unfortunately, our teens and children today, when they make a mistake, everybody knows about it because it's on social media. So of course, then everyone put their perfect face, photoshopping, and had on, the best. And I that was a lot of pressure for children. And so again, I think through this process and using technology, we are humanizing ourselves. And the reason that's important is I am about to lose battery, so I'm going to step away and connect just so I don't lose it before we end. But I'm still listening to you.
Okay, great. I am getting some questions from some of our listeners. One is, how, as a parent, can I explain the timeline of the pandemic to my child? Because it seems to be going on forever. So how would you suggest or recommend that a parent talk to a young child about how long this is going to go on?
So I might map it out too. And of course, you will do it differently depending on the age, but I might even draw it on a picture board and say, from X. And and the first thing I will say to parents is make sure you let your children know, we talk about words, that we don't know all of the answers. And so things might change, right? And so you want to say, here's what we think it is today. We are going to continue to listen to the doctors and the scientists and the smartest people. At the very beginning, when children get afraid, one of the things I recommend that parents say is, yes, we have this virus, but we have the smartest people working on this. And I used to quote Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers said, in times of worry and trouble, look for the helpers. And so I think you could let our children know that smart people are working on this and are working on getting us back to school and solving these problems. And here's what we know. Now, I would say that this is hard for children because they don't always understand 3 months from now or 6 months from now, 9 months from now. And remember, depending on their age, that might be 1/3, to 1/4 of their lives. So we have to be careful, but I would do it in small chunks. I would be honest and upfront and say, don't know for sure, but here's what we do know for the next 4 weeks. You can break it up in those chunks of time, because I think if you talk about 2021, and again, it depends on the age and the child. Sometimes they say however they measure time, by next summer, we should be able to do X, Y, and Z. But I do encourage to be careful, because this has been the most frustrating. And I do know that, we've been learning as we go on this, and you'd hate to promise by next summer and then it not come to fruition. So that's why I would really focus, especially with the younger children, on small chunks of time. Here's our goal from now until the end of November. And then because that's more predictable. And then when you get to December 1st, here's our December goal. So I would encourage breaking it up into chunks of time that your young ones can understand.
That makes so much sense. We had another question that came in and asked, and we're going to run out of time, but I do want to put this question out, which is, do you have recommendations for calming techniques that a parent can use with their child? You said to remain calm. How can parents just really bring that to life for their children?
I always like the tried and true, take a deep breath. And I like that better than counting. We used to ask people to count, and counting is okay too, because anything that gets a child to be able to stop for the moment and do something else. And I think deep breathing requires a little bit more work than counting. And so I would say, okay, let's take 10 deep breaths, and then after that. So I think deep breathing is very good way to get our children's calm. let me just say another tried and true, a practical thing is sometimes we have to turn off the TV, especially the news. And, early at the beginning of the pandemic, I was president of the AMA and I was on TV a lot. And so I really had to be immersed in the news, and I had news on literally 24/7. But I realized I even needed a break. And so from time to time, I had to go to a studio, and of course, we practice all the safety measures. Had to take temperature and all that, but I had to go through studio, and in the car, I would find myself even listening to the news. And one of the things I learned that I had to stop doing that. And so I love sports. I'm a huge Atlanta sports fan, no matter what the team. And I would listen to our local talk radio. So I had to stop, listening to the news. So that's another thing you might want to calm. And I think a routine, and I would put a routine up every day, even if it has to change slightly, but here's a routine for the day. They can plan and focus on that for the day. And hopefully that will help them with some certainty in, listen, an otherwise uncertain world and uncertain times.
That's great. I wonder if you have any, we're down to like 1 minute, I think, but if you have any recommendations for resources that parents can connect to for any further information.
I do. So I mentioned Mr. Rogers early, but I think Sesame Street has done a fantastic job. And so for those who have access, and I think some of their materials is available online, but they've done a wonderful job of talking about COVID. I don't even CNN, work with Sesame Street to do some things about COVID, some children's town halls. A couple of the other networks have done that too. So that's been great. So Sesame Street, aacap.org. That is just the website for the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry. I will repeat that, aacap.org. They have great resources. psych.org is the website for the American Psychiatric Association. And finally, everydayhealth.com. And I'm so excited. I just became the medical editor-in-chief at everydayhealth.com. And they really have a lot of resources. And there's a webinar series, and one of the web series was on children and anxiety during COVID. So those are 4 resources that I recommend.
Well, that's wonderful. And we will post those so that everyone can go back and look and find those. Those sound really perfect. Well, we are really at the end of our time. I think we could talk to you for hours, and I think our listeners would love to just pepper you with a million questions. But Dr. Harris, thank you so much for taking time. I know you were incredibly busy. I see you on CNN on a regular basis, but thank you for lending your time, your expertise, and really your passion for children this morning with us.
It has been my pleasure to do so. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.